Welcome to Allegedly Higher, where humor, insight, and passion collide with higher education. Hosted by Dr. Aaron and Dr. Candace. Join them as they dive into headlines, interview leaders, and challenge norms. From dismantling systems to championing equity, this podcast is your go-to for transforming the ivory tower. Let's get into it.
Welcome to Allegedly Higher, the podcast where we dissect issues in higher education through a human-centered lens spiced up with pop culture flair. I am your host, Dr. Aaron, and I'm joined by my lovely co-host, Dr. Jackson, and together we are your guides through the maze of academia. We're going to stop saying it's been a minute. We're going to get our act together, we promise.
I know, right? Oh my God. Life is lifing. Life is
Yes.
lifing.
I can't even remember if we recorded after we attended the FYE conference.
We did.
Okay.
We did record after that because we had
Yeah.
a great time.
After that was a blur.
I know.
But it was a good blur, I think. Maybe.
Yes, it was. It was a good blur. And then life started lifing again. And, so here we are.
Yes.
But so much to talk about.
Yes.
So much to talk about.
So you are ending a semester.
Yes, Lord. Thank you. Thank you. Working on grades and trying to navigate that and final exams and commencements and all of the like. Yeah. And the semester is always interesting in higher ed, particularly in times such as these.
I just say a prayer for y'all, honestly. I'm in it, like I have feet in it, but not every day.
Oh, yeah, it's a struggle. The emails that my colleagues receive about, I need a C in this class. Is there any extra credit work I can do? Like, this is college, but it's amazing.
And here I am. I don't know, but I do have a couple of my babies who grew up quickly graduating this year and next.
Yeah.
And I have, I've gotten out of the college prep game.
Yeah.
And it's just been, I got frustrated just with our own systems because I was like, I'm trying to prep on the one hand outside of my job to go to a system I know is messed up. And so it just like tore me apart. And so I did get back on the horse. I do it for special people. And even last night I was on Zoom with I would say my first niece. She was born when we were Southeastern, and so she's 8, she's 17, and I've seen her. She lives in California, and I've seen her, but it was just like looking at her. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe it. So I was helping her with scheduling her classes. I was helping her. She's going to LSU, and I was like, "Oh Lord, this has changed a lot." But I still knew the ins and outs, and she was extremely grateful. But it's just I'm always torn, and I want students to go to college, but it's just like I'm teaching them they have to be so alert. They have to be on guard. Like I want to prepare them to have a great time, but so much of this you do have to take them through real world prep as well. And even that, and she's second, she's second generation, but it's not we're not that far removed from first gen, right? She still has to don't have to worry about the money part that's done. But I don't know. They'll figure it out. I know.
Yeah, they'll figure it out. I mean, my grandson is finishing up his first year. My nephew is graduating at the end of the month, literally. And the world is different. And even though I do this every day, of course, with them, I'm either Mama Candace or TT. And, they don't associate me with actually working in higher ed, right? Like the things. So nobody asked me how to do anything, right? Everybody else in the world can get this work. But it has changed. And I think even if you are first, second, third, or fourth, that first generation, the rules do not apply. They don't. So we're always in constant understanding. And I think that that's probably why, when you're talking to them at 17, 18, it's a very different world from when you went through, when I went through. And unfortunately, leadership has not understood that because they don't really have a lot of boots on the ground, right? And so they are so far removed in their towers that they don't recognize when faculty say these are not the same kids, this is not the same preparedness. So those things that you're taking away that you deem as, oh, they don't need this or they don't need that or they don't need this tutorial center, or they don't need that. The world is very different. And as much as our students are much more articulate, much more forward thinking, entrepreneurial minded, they lack basic skills, whether they're in conversation and whether they're in mathematical computation, writing ability. They lack those things because there's this idea that they had all this technology and they had all this access. But somebody forgot that they have to be taught how to use those things and how to process them because we've been sticking an iPad in their hands since they were 9 months old.
Yeah.
And then as the world became much more anti-intellectual, that we're not having those kind of conversations and experiences and all those things. So they're lacking those basic things while we've given them access to everything.
Yeah.
And so it's difficult to tell a 17, 18-year-old kid, listen, this is the way these things go, because in their world it doesn't. But the administrators and the way leadership and higher ed functions is very much still a 20th century analog kind of thing that you're having to pull them kicking and screaming. And even those who think that they're doing something progressive in the 21st century, they're still doing it with a 20th century mindset. And so it's still not coalescing the way it should,
Come together.
They're not coming together the way they should.
Such an inside joke. Imagine someone using that DNA during us planning a faculty staff retreat. Like, woman, what are you talking about? She's trying to describe breakout groups.
With a DNA model. Listen, if we actually told the people the real stories and even changed the name to protect the guilty, you'd probably still get sued. So
I really do want to talk about the movie we watched and compared it to.
Give us. It's been a minute.
But yeah. If you watch The Resident, there's The Resident, which I also like on Netflix. That's the medical show. But there's The Resident with I can't never remember her real name, but she's Crazy Eyes from Orange is the New Black, and Shonda Rhimes produced it. But it is really about workplace issues. If a criminal act happened, like murder, and all of the workplace was indicted some kind of way, they all had a reason to commit the crime. And I was like, oh my God, why am I why can I relate to this?
Yeah, we lived it. Not the murder part.
No, not that. But it's the fact that it was a workplace issue drama. Everybody had something. And I'll give a background and I relate it back to higher ed. And it may trigger some people. It was a White House staff, new turnover administration, right? We know how that goes. And you just the chief of staff or some bubbly personality. Not like you, chief of staff, but it's a new. You knew what you was doing, but it was the social director who was this rich person. Her daddy contributed to the campaign. That's how she got it. So she comes in and she wants to change the whole tradition of the house. Pieces that had been in the house 100 years, things that they've done. She brought in a medium and said, let's change this room to yellow because it feels this way. Like, just changing stuff. And because she didn't eat meat, they couldn't put meat on the menu. And literally at the state dinner, the guests is turning over their plates because there was no food on the plates. And so it was just so triggering about how people just come in and change things and not get the history, not get the context of it. And I make a point, and it was crazy. I just did what I normally do, right? What I thought was right. But at the end, when I had faculty coming up and say, you're the only new person who came in to ask us the history of things and what had happened and take me through this change and that change and the outcome and consequence of things, I was like, that's all I had to do was listen. And so that was in that way I related to it. It was just, like I said, it was a regular workplace drama, but it captured so many of the nuances of whether it's higher ed or anything, just changes in workplace and culture.
A lot of people don't, particularly in higher ed, but in general, there's this idea that if you need me, right? And not understanding that CEOs and CFOs and provosts and all of those things, all of these higher ed executive C-suites, those are expendable and they are also transient. And so you are there for a short, for a brief period of time, whether it's 5 or 6 years, and then you move on. And so the people who remain, who have the historical and cultural and community knowledge, you have to be advised to understand. And if you understand the thought process of something, and even if something, if you go, okay, they've been doing this all this time and it's not working, and even to understand the pathology. You have to understand it in order to help them see it differently, if that is something necessary. And sometimes when we're transient and we're coming in and we don't see why they're doing some things this way, perhaps when we get an understanding, we go, okay, I understand that. Let's see how we can enhance this. Because what you also have to do in any workplace and in any, is to give people and allow people their humanity. If you don't do that, that's where the pushback comes in. That's where, I didn't like initially the BET show. What was it? The Yard, Anika Noni Rose.
Yeah,
Right.
of husband
I had some real problems because I was like, this is, who did y'all consult?
Yeah.
And I think that they had some backlash and they tried to clean it up and it made it much better. But she comes in and she cancels for the budget. She cancels a traditional bonfire experience, right? She's like, well, we can't afford it. Well, you can't take away the tradition. They can't support you. You may be looking at this as dollars and cents. Now, mind you, this was an HBCU. She never worked at one, never attended one, didn't understand, and she's making it dollars and cents. But some things are not dollars and cents. And some things you have to understand that you do because it is culture. And that is just as important as your dollars and cents.
Yeah.
And so when you come in and take away that kind of stuff, it is so important. And I don't think a lot of administrators and leaders in any field really truly understand what that is.
Yeah.
And how that changes a culture for the worse if you don't. But that is what we are, in this season.
Well, let's get to our hot topics. I thought we had a name for it. Brand new show. It's like a brand new show. But before we end, I would like to take this moment to put a little something on y'all's minds. So let's be real. Most first year programs aren't keeping up with the real world needs of today's students. That's why I wrote Go Wiser Secrets to College Success. It's a down to earth, research based guide that helps students navigate college, not just survive it. If you're an educator looking for something practical to use in orientation, seminars, or retention programs, this book can anchor your efforts. And hey, if you got a new high school grad in your life, grab them a copy too. It's one of the best tools you can put in their hands right now. To order in bulk or book a training for your students, faculty, or staff, visit holistichigheredsolutions.com, or we'll be sure to put the link in our show notes wherever you're listening or watching. So it was a lot of stuff.
Great book. Great book.
Thank you. I read it and I get motivated.
I wish I had that book when I was back in the 1900s when I was.
I was right behind you in the 2000s. The 99, literally the 99 in the 2000s. So, speaking of 99s and 2000s, it's nothing to do with this next topic except for the gap. There's probably 99 years in between Shannon Sharpe's age and the young woman who's who's accusing him of repeated sexual assault during their relationship. Sharpe has denied the claims like anybody would actually acknowledge them. He has stepped away from ESPN, and now a Surface Radio clip allegedly of him making threats has only intensified public scrutiny. And I think as of today, the girl is still maybe threatening him to release it. She's like, I don't know, maybe. So that has him on his toes. So What do you think? What do you?
Listen, listen. You know, Uncle Shannon. You know, it's really about trying to capture youth and maintain youth. This is also part of a larger conversation about how men, sometimes those with means and money, want to be big daddy. And if you're dating someone within your weight class, you don't get to feel that way, right? And so I think this is part of it. But I'm just going to tell you, if you can if you are 56, 57 years old, you should not be going anywhere less than 30. Her brain is not at 23. Your frontal lobe is not fully formed at 25. Until 25, they say, and I'll be honest with you, probably 30. He can probably bounce back from this once it's all revealed. You don't think so? You don't think he can bounce back? I think it's
Who
always
is
going
on
to
his
take.
team? I don't know if he had a better team, he
Yeah,
could. But he was on the nightcap and he said, I haven't heard the clip, but I heard he crashed out there about it. Like, shut up. Absolutely shut your mouth. Like, I'm glad you're stepping away. Step away from everything. Go on a vacation. Talking about he taking time for family. Like, just go with
but
them, do what you have to do, but shut up. Just shut up.
he can't help it. Because see, now he's scrambling and crashing out. But if you had picked you somebody who who was a little bit older, if you're dating somebody younger than your children, it's a problem.
It is a problem. And I'm like, I don't understand if some of your daughters brought you home. Now, mind you, he may say, I ain't going home to meet the parents. She's not that kind of girl. Or we don't have the kind of relationship. But still, what if your daughter brought back home your friends from your one of your friends from ESP and that they made it?
Right. Trying to get on through. You know, I just listen. There is nothing, absolutely nothing. One of these children, because I know they're technically grown. Get that right? But there's nothing that not one of these children can do. We can't have a conversation. We can't do any of that. In terms,
What he
no.
said, they was arguing on that tape.
If I say the elements and you can't tell me Earth, Wind, and Fire, then there is literally nothing we can talk
But it killed on that tape that was released, that conversation.
about.
He was just so disgusted, and he's like, "Man, it is what it is." And when she hit him back with, "What does that even mean?"
Right? She's a kid. You can't. No, no. But I think that that's part of the issue. You know, Shannon has never been married, and that is his right, and that is his choice. He has children. And sort of wanting, I don't know, maintain youth, not having the adulation. I don't know what that is. I know one thing: there is nothing a 23-year-old can do for me. Period.
I
I
think
don't
you
even.
giving her a little great. Giving her
I
a
think
little
she's
great.
23, right? Is she 23?
Yeah. No.
Yeah, I think it started when she was much. I think
19. Yeah.
19. Even that. Oh my God.
That's even worse. How do you start something at 19? You didn't even see 23.
Monique tried to tell him on her show. I mean, when she
Right.
was on the show,
Everybody.
everybody's tried to tell him. So you're gonna learn it. I think he can bounce back, but what'll probably happen is he gonna get him a nice, sturdy black woman, and he'll be out. That's what they all do. That's what they all do, right? They're gonna finally,
I
But
think so. I just think I don't know. It's just like I pick up details while he's talking. He don't trust women. He talked about that, but I really thought he moved more carefully because of that. He talked about why he never stays over at a woman's house because he had an incident where the woman's boyfriend came in as he was leaving and it was almost a life or death situation. So he said that he just little things he's talked about, but also there he left little breadcrumbs, inappropriate breadcrumbs about the ages of girls he likes. He's talked about Angel Reese of spreading her legs open. He's talked about what he would do to Meg. And so every time these young women come in front of him on the show, he's apologizing to them. And you can see they're uncomfortable. You can see how they're uncomfortable. You can see the exchange about him in Miami. Now he ain't he wouldn't be able to handle Miami because Miami that's a different type.
But I think also when he was at the depths of poverty that he experienced, it's not an excuse. But I think in terms of his
Mm-hmm.
thinking, right, that they always want to relive the time when what they would have done in their 20s and their 30s when they had like real money. Because when Shannon was playing, they weren't paying
Yeah.
like the millions that they're paying now. It was better than what they were paying Jim Brown and some of the earlier ones. But even then, I think that there's a sense that I wanna live, and I got the money now to do whatever, and I can flaunt it, and I can pay for this, and I can do this, and this was the type of girl that wouldn't give me the time of day. And so now I got them because I got money. I think that there's a disconnect of pathology in the thinking of that, about how they're approaching this. But yeah, I mean, they're uncomfortable. I love, one of my favorite comedians is Dion Cole. Shout out to Dion Cole. When he says, you want to get an old man off of you, just say Mr. And a lot of them, they have taken the uncle thing as a sort of term of endearment, but not really understanding. Yeah, we calling you uncle because you old.
Yeah, we are putting you in that relationship with family.
Right, we're giving you sort of respect in that way. Yeah, you Uncle Shannon, you're Mr. You Mr. And I think that that's what they're trying to fight against, and it is just your own mortality. I deal with a lot of seasoned saints myself in various organizations, and there is a fight in that generational kind of thing, right? Sometimes. And prayerfully, I won't get to that point, but there is a generational shift in trying to figure out that you're old, And so I was talking to my cousin just this morning driving in, and we're talking about, she said, well, someone, how old is this? I was talking about a student. I said, I think she's in her 30s. She said, oh, she's just a kid. Now, when I was in my 30s, I would say, oh, she's not old. She my age. She's in the 30s. But at half 100, at 50, these would be, I would say, she's a kid, they're young. And I remember what that is. And it's helped me in that way to understand separation. At 23, you're not full, you're making some bad choices. You're going to always make some bad choices. And I will tell you, and this is, hopefully not TMI, but I'm going to give you some perspective. My sister's mother was 23 when she had her. And my father was 38. He should have known better between 38 and 23. Okay. When I turned 36, I think at that time she might have, whatever it was right after my mother died. And there were some things that happened because when a 23-year-old has a baby, there's some immaturity still, right? But there was a point when she turned 50, when my sister's mother turned 50, and I released her from all of that. Because when I look back, having now had some experience of being 23, having taught 23-year-olds, all of those things, I realized how young 23 was.
Yep.
Right? And so that was a gift for both of us to be able to say, I release you from my anger, from my hurt, because you were 23. And then when I got to be 38 and 40 and 45 and now 50, I realized how young my daddy was at 38.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You have to understand that where people are, where they are. And then when you get there, you realize, oh, wait a minute. At 38, you are a fully grown adult with a kid, a wife. And so you got all these things going on, right? And a mortgage or two. You got all these things, right? At 38, where was I at 38? I wasn't, I was just now embarking upon my career. I'm just trying to, there are levels to that.
Yeah.
And I don't think Shannon has gone past understanding that. I think he's still mentally kind of stuck in wanting to be the man and wanting to be with these women who did not give him the time of day and who would not. And I think part of that is also, see, y'all want me to just play on this field and I got your little daughters. I don't know what that is. That's crazy.
But also, I feel like it's an account of, I feel like older women would have made him accountable, would have made, like, he wouldn't have been able to have his way, and he thought he could control the younger one. But to his surprise, now I don't even know if this is correct. She got him over a barrel.
But now, again, you should let him sign that contract, girl. That's let you know fully formed. That frontal lobe is not fully formed. You didn't even let him sign the contract before you came out. Yeah, you done messed up the contract.
Yep.
So what you gonna get? You can't get blood from a turnip. But see, when you mess with when you mess with somebody whose frontal lobe is not full, she came out And this lawyer, the same lawyer that tried to sue and Jay-Z, just an ambulance
I'm
chaser.
so mad at that. Like how you gonna get this one win that he ain't gonna never get on the Diddy cases? Never gonna get on. Probably 2 steps from being disbarred. How is it that you're gonna let him get that close to a win to establish 2% of credibility?
Right. I think, but I also know that when people are engaged in their whatever, that they speak a certain way, they talk a certain way, just say, I'm gonna kill you. Nobody actually believes that, right? If I'm gonna bust your head to the white meat, nobody believes that. Or if you jokingly tell somebody, I'm gonna throw you under the bus, these are not verbal assaults. These are not verbal assaults, right? Which I was accused of. So,
Yeah, I want to know the actual phrase.
so I think I think taken out of context. But then again, you dealing with somebody who recorded you. So just like with, you know, they always know that they're recording, even though you're not. You should always know if you're in a one-party state and whether or not your calls can be recorded.
Yeah, that's something I learned
Dr.
from Dr. Jackson. I wish I never had to learn that. But
Yeah,
the only thing question his temporal lobe. You question this little girl's.
right, right. Well, the
I've
problem is
read
he's not thinking with that load.
allegedly he asked her like 2 different times in there. What is that? 5 years courtship, 4-year courtship to sign an NDA. How do you not? How do you not let that happen? Some people have stacks of allegedly. Some people have stacks of NDAs coming into a party.
Okay, okay. So
Uncle Shannon,
Uncle is
Shannon. Lord have mercy. I just,
maybe he'll come back. Maybe he'll come back.
I hope so. I really do. But
Let's see what the apology tour will be.
Yeah.
The
I
next
don't
one
think
when he comes out with.
he's gonna need some media training from Olivia Pope herself.
Listen,
Look, the actor and the real person who was based on,
right?
because he don't have no media training at all. I think they just got him a class in communications just to be able to ask the right questions on the podcast.
Well, at least he got a little card, and you can tell when he doesn't know how to say. Well, he had a little card. He reads the card, and then you be like, okay, so hey, we're gonna make it do what it do, bro.
We were rooting for you.
We were all rooting for you. Yes.
Let's go to NFL, the draft. There's a whole lot of things, a whole lot of angles we
Layers
can take this.
of her layers. What are your thoughts?
So, admittedly, I wasn't that interested in the draft. If Colin Kaepernick's situation wouldn't have happened, I would not have believed that the NFL would use these tactics. I don't know, and I can't speak to the other side of how well Shedeur was and how much it was hype. I know he's talented. I know that part. But in comparison to the other young men in the draft, their stats, their numbers, and all the things that make them attractive to teams, I can't speak to how Shedeur stacked up, taking away the last name and all of that. I've always loved Deion Sanders and his family, and I can't think of the brother's name. Shallow. I love the way they have raised young men to be even like it's so okay. Again, one layer. You have this layer of being bold, courageous, standing on the work that you've done the work. Like you just not a name brand. Like they have done the work, right? And being able like have and I've dealt with this. I'm dealing with this now. It's still an ongoing issue of saying I'm a business owner or I'm trying to build like it's so hard to when you put it out there and you can see my resume, but me telling about myself and standing in that is uncomfortable. They have that. I would love to have that. Some people's self-esteem, self-efficacy, which is my distaste topic, some like that. There's a couple of things, a couple of layers of self-efficacy. There's the one where, which we see in first year students, there's the one where they have the 4.2 GPA. You can't tell them nothing. But then they realize that you have had a 4.2 in high school, baby. This is college. This is life. Totally different. You have no experience in this area to even have a little bit of confidence. So there's that. So I feel like they are there. They're at that good point where they have the work, they have the skill, and and it's not even bragging, it's just saying, I know I can do this and I can back it up. But I think for whatever, not whatever reason, Black people can't. We've been taught to be humble, hide it, and Dion has never done that, and he was not going to teach his young sons to do that. I see them as humble. They like nice, well mannered young men. The way he accepted the apology of the prank caller, who I would have. That's another layer we're going to discuss.
Itching.
I know. I want to hit that first. I want to hit all of that first. But even how his response to accepting the apologies, I accept the apology. Yes, it was messed up, but we all do childish things once in a while. I've done some childish things. So, you know, I forgive you. He didn't have to say that. He didn't have to say nothing one.
Yeah. I think so. Full disclosure, I have never. I've been very vocal about the fact that I did not appreciate the way in which Coach left Jackson State University.
Mhm.
It wasn't that he left; it was how he left. And I think I can take confidence. He can be confident and arrogant at the same time, because Dion came up at a time where, like, he was when Dion was playing, you needed a touch of swagger. He had the swagger, he could back it up. But people weren't doing football camps at 6, 7, and 8. Like, it wasn't this sort of um, social media. We can learn about a kid in elementary school running or middle school running, and they start recruiting and watching somebody as early as that, because we didn't have that much access. The world was so separate, and it wasn't, as small by made smaller by technology as it is now. I didn't think that, having watched Shedeur, I knew he would go for no other reason than he was a Sanders. I knew he would go at least in the first round or the second round at the least. Right? We all knew Travis Hunter was going to go in the top 5, if not first. So so then we have this whole draft situation, and I wasn't watching the draft because I just knew, he was going to go top 5. He was going to do all of the things, and so when I get home and they go, it's the third round, it's the second round, he hadn't been called. But what do you mean? So I know that this is also partly, I did a whole lot of media tour about who he wasn't going to let him play for, and all of that. And sometimes it's not about, I don't want to I don't want to seem like I'm like, you got to be humble. You got to do all of those things. That's not necessarily what I mean, but you also have to be strategic. And I don't
Yeah.
think Dion had to be strategic
Yeah.
in it. I don't think he was as strategic as he thought he was, and he was doing more interviews than Shedeur, um, or even Travis at this time. Like, it really became, he was reliving his own moment.
Yeah.
And I think that is what scares a lot of teams about playing with these boys, because they're going to want to be the coach. So Dion was kind of putting himself out there as agent, manager, whatever he was doing. And I think that turned a lot of people off. And and the NFL is petty. It's been petty, right? But I think not. I don't want you to have to be humble. I don't want you to bend. I don't want you to bend the knee. I don't want you to do any of that. But I do think that Dion could have been more strategic.
Yeah.
And not
Yeah.
have been vocal, because sometimes it has to be about strategy. And there might have been teams, and so they bring up Eli Manning and what he did, and not wanting to go to the Chargers and wanting to go to the Giants. But that was still behind the scenes. We are just now kind of really getting an acknowledgement of that after Eli has retired. But that was also strategic. It might have been behind the scenes. Now, I'm not saying we can't be vocal, but we gotta be strategic. And I don't
Yeah.
think Dion has the strategy, because he likes the spotlight. I mean,
Yeah.
this is, and so it kind of detracted from these boys coming into their own in the spotlight. We already knew that Shiloh was probably going to be undrafted. Though I'm gonna just tell you, that boy being a classically trained pianist, I wouldn't let my child mess up his fingers and hands playing football when he could have a whole career as a classically trained musician and producer. I
Yeah.
mean, the boy, you know what I mean? Again, I know all about the money, right? The prime song. I love it. But I just think he wasn't strategic enough in order to be delicate in this.
Yeah. I think I would have if I was a PR or Olivia Pope the situation, it would have been
Mhm.
seeds planted to say, well, they're graduating. I'm not gonna be their coach anymore. I'm gonna step in a role as a dad, as a mentor. We're switching agents, we're switching all of this. I'm just gonna be daddy in the stands.
I remember Dion was on Tamron Hall, and she said, well, what if I think it was Tamron Hall, what if Shedeur wants to do, what if people saying about whether or not Shedeur should be doing these interviews? And he said something very positive, but very telling. He said, my children know my voice. There's something, yes, and I want them to, but sometimes you can't tell everybody what you're already thinking. And I think that's probably part of,
Yeah.
now, but it also sets your child up for a prank phone call. And that people, again, there's so many layers to that. Like fully formed frontal lobe. He old enough to know better. Now he
Yeah.
probably, that boy has cost his father his job and a faculty organization. So they find the coach, but 100,000, and they $250,000.
Okay. I thought was it a coordinator, assistant coach? I thought he had to take the whole 350.
They find the team and then find the coach.
Charlemagne this morning had a very good point, which I was thinking. He said, whatever trust that young man has set up, whatever savings, if he got a car, he gonna sell it. You gonna have to work this down.
Because at this point, then you put your father's job in jeopardy for any other team because they can't trust you or the child.
Yep.
And not only did he do this, he did this in concert with a friend of his, which means, y'all got together and thought this was funny. And the fact that it clearly outlines that you have not taught your child to be respectful.
I don't even think they thought, they don't have, again, that frontal lobe, they had no sense of consequences, repercussions, and you filmed it. We would have never known unless they traced the call who did it.
Right. But I also know that they give them the burner phones so that only some, this particular person, these teams had a number. So it wasn't that hard to trace. But that means that you also have a lack of humanity. What are you this boy who makes this prank phone call on the biggest night of someone's life? This is what you choose to do, as if you didn't do that to anybody else.
Nobody.
So it also shows a lack of, it's disrespectful to the Sanders family, but also on how you all feel about this young Black man at the precipice of a wonderful career in the NFL, that this is what you do, that you're mocking, and you don't use the Falcons, you use the Saints, right? The Saints ought to be mad that you use their name, that you put, and the fact that Shedeur is gracious enough to say, I accept your apology, and people mess up. And so that he has an emotional intelligence that allows him that on his biggest night, while he is sliding in the draft, that he can still say, I accept the apology. This is what comes with the territory. Even though he may be hurt inside, he's embarrassed. It's all of those things, right? Because, you got this party going on and you slide to the fifth round. That has to be painful. For whatever reason, whether whether or not you were told to or counseled or mentored to how you conducted your pre-draft interviews, whatever incorrect information or your behavior, you realize in this moment, it all has consequences.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the NFL coaches are petty. I think this was a way for them to humble him early. I think he's going to do well.
Was he humble? I don't think he was humble.
But
I don't think that it impacted him. I feel like this is an opportunity to.
It's going to give him fuel. It's sort of, I watch boxing a lot, and so I always like the fight between Sugar Shane and Floyd Mayweather.
Mm-hmm.
And Sugar hit Floyd with a hard shot, like in the second round.
Mm-hmm.
And there was this recognition on Shane's face at the time where it was like, I might win this thing. I might have a shot. And it drove him, as opposed to fueling him to keep going, it scared him. Possibility scared him. Floyd, on the other hand, said, "That boy hit me," and now I was like, "Oh, wake up!
Yeah.
Right, you okay? Let me."
You ain't,
So
ain't no, oh, ain't no.
right. So I think for this, once that boy takes the field, I think it's going to be fuel. I think they thought it was going to humble him.
No, he has a franchise is building and growing and
Right.
trying to get somewhere as opposed to someone who's trying to keep a legacy like the Eagles or um the other team.
So I think he'll do well wherever he lands, whenever he gets on. I think Shiloh will as well, but I think that they got to be given a fair shot.
Mm,
They won't be given a fair shot unless people give them a fair shot.
yeah.
And they can't use they you cannot and should not use uh, uh, the father against them. We had the same thing. Now nobody cared about Bill Walton and Luke Walton of the Lakers. That boy became the dang coach. Luke, really?
Nobody cared about the Mannings either.
Right? No, So all of that. The worst thing that they did to the Mannings was they when Peyton decided to go to Tennessee,
Mm-hmm.
the folks treated Archie
Mm-hmm.
like he had the plague because that boy didn't go to Ole Miss. I am a loyalist, and I'm a loyal person. There's no way I could have gone to Tennessee and my daddy went to Ole Miss knowing that they were SEC rivals. I couldn't have done that.
Yeah.
However, that was his decision, and Archie let him make his decision. And I think that's also why Eli went to Ole Miss.
Mm-hmm.
But nobody vilifies him as second generation.
Yep.
But also be strategic. It's not about trying to be humble or trying to play, but you've got to be strategic in certain circles. We all have to be strategic in our lives, and I think this is one of those cases. But I think Shedeur and Shiloh will both be more like Floyd than Shedeur.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree.
So I'm hoping that they do well, and I'm hoping that they stay out of trouble and they date in their weight class. I don't want 30 years from now to be talking about Shedeur like Uncle Shannon.
Or Bill Belichick.
And
Just
that girl crashing out on national TV. But
on
girl, if you don't sit
CBS.
down,
CBS,
oh
not TMZ. CBS Morning News. I mean, CBS Sunday morning.
now, man, oh my God, it's awful.
Well, we're going to talk about some higher ed topics because we are allegedly higher. But before we hop in, we have a message from one of our sponsors, eConnect Card. As a student or professional creating a personal digital card with the eConnect's card app, this is a modern way to introduce you and connect yourself with others. With an e-card, you're able to share more than just your basic contact information with our QR code or custom link to our digital e-card. It helps make it easy for recruiters, professionals, peers, colleagues to connect with you instantly. You can highlight key milestones, career aspirations, show school pride with your school logo, and add quick links to your LinkedIn profile, social media platforms, and more. The best part, it's fast, free, and easy to get started. Simply download the eCards app from the Apple or Google Play Store and create your eCard today. Happy e-connecting. To learn more, visit www.econnectcardsapp.com. So, if you have a business, this is a great minority tech business that we're highlighting today, our featured sponsor. But if you have a company you would like to include sponsorship as for, be sure to email us at info@holistichighered.com. We have a lot of higher ed stuff. When I'm looking through these topics, it does grieve me. I'll be trying to find some topics that won't bring me down, nor do I have to sift through too much crazy topics to find out the real truth in regards. Honestly, I don't even have the bandwidth to discuss any of the Department of Ed's things because who knows? Right. Who knows? I'm want to wait for the consequences and repercussions other than, our colleagues losing their jobs and having to shift. That's the saddest part. So let's start with new Carnegie classifications. They have updated the Carnegie. This is your, I want to, so I feel like there's higher ed, there's student success, student affairs, the fun stuff. And then there's academia and academicians.
Yes,
I'm not
yes.
one of those persons. Dr. Candace Love Jackson is an academician. I'm a higher ed professional. But if you don't know, the Carnegie Classification system, basically the way we label and rank colleges and universities, just got a major overhaul for 2025. The update introduces clear research tiers like R1, R2, and a new category called research colleges and universities for schools that do meaningful research but don't grant many doctoral degrees. My favorite, they've also added a new student access and success category. So maybe now faculty will pay attention to that. And these, I'm sorry, category that looks at how well colleges serve low income students and boost post grad earnings, which I feel like is incredible. Should have been doing that all along. I don't know how that got mixed up. It's the biggest shift in how we evaluate higher ed in decades. And, we still gonna talk about DEI here, unless President Trump issues executive order against allegedly hire for saying DEI. I don't. They might do it.
Get another new.
Yeah, Elon may have created an algorithm to like search out DEI on the internet and just cancel. Somebody they actually did that. Wait, I don't know if I can. Well, the organization in actually your state that had an old post on Twitter that had a lot. Look, I mean, look, I am point you can't see, but they was
Right.
and yeah, they had a lot of research grants. They had a lot of grants, government grants, to do a specific work in Mississippi. Back when George Floyd stuff was happening, they found an old tweet that said they supported, found it, and they had a notice to say their grants are pulled. Like
Yeah, we
millions.
we just so with the designation, I think it's interesting that particularly HBCUs who still, HBCU faculty do research, they present at conferences, but most HBCUs are teaching institutions, which means faculty are teaching 4 classes, and it's very difficult to do research and put out books, and harder for us to become these public intellectuals because people typically go to larger institutions or northern Black institutions as opposed to the ones in the South or the ones with names, right? And so I think this is going to be great for smaller colleges, HBCUs, MSIs, minority serving institutions. Can we still use those designations?
I don't
But
care.
I think, what I'm more interested in is this new category, right? Sorry, I'm in my office. This new access and success category is important because they're not looking at that. That means that if you're only focusing on research, that means that the teaching and the learning process is sort of out of the purview, right? It's not the focus. And so an institution like my grad institution, UNC Chapel Hill, where full faculty are teaching only 2 classes so that they can focus on research and do research, then something gets lost in translation with the classroom teaching and why we're actually there. Why do we get in the business in the first place, right? Yeah. And so I find that to be the best part of this. Yes, research is great. But hey, at this point, we're going to all get back to teaching if they're pulling research dollars based on petty disagreements with institutions.
Correct.
Right? So you're going to have to get back into teaching. You're going to have to get back into what we're supposed to be doing at these institutions of higher learning. And it doesn't, that there must be a balance in that. But that is the one that gives me more. I'm really interested in how they're treating those students.
Yeah.
And how they're serving those students, not just to have your numbers up and to get your state allocations or to get your tuition dollars, but how are you serving these students to change the trajectory of a family? Because I may be if someone's a first generation from low income economic strata, the point is to pull up, right? But if I don't serve them, if I know that I'm recruiting from secondary ed districts that lack funding, that lack certified teachers, I've got to serve. That has to be my mandate. It has to be something that I need to do. I can't just take their financial aid and their tuition dollars, hard earned as they are, whatever level, whether it's community college or 4-year or whatever program. I have to make sure that I am not doing them a disservice.
Yeah.
And so that's going to be key in how we market, how we serve, how we do all of those things in higher ed, because that area of how, that post-grad honor, how we boost that, it's all going to matter. Hopefully they'll change the scorecard too.
Lord.
The scorecard does not really address, particularly for Black colleges that focus on graduate and professional school, because guess what? We just can't graduate with a degree from a UNC Chapel Hill. You can
Yeah.
graduate with your bachelor's degree and go get a job starting out at a decent salary. Where we have always typically had to pursue a higher degree to get the starting salary of a baccalaureate degree student from a Chapel Hill or a UCLA or a Penn State because of the name. And so it does not include that in our post-grad earnings. It does not include how many students out of a graduating class went to graduate and professional school, and break that down, because it just looks like, oh, well, the starting salary might be 28,000. Well, they're grad students, and a lot of them. So we've got to change and overhaul some things. But while folks are looking at something else, let's do some real work.
Yeah. This kind of strikes a chord with me because I decided to go into STEM education. I never wanted to do benchtop research, but my desire was to actually research teaching and learning and how to improve retention in STEM. But the way that most the perspective that most departments took and how they hired, I needed to have a hard doctoral degree in a hard science to do that research. And they didn't trust anybody who didn't have that to do the teaching. And I'm like, but I'm an expert in teaching and learning in STEM. I don't want to do bench top. I can do a regular biology 101 because I actually, well, more than a bachelor's and a master's in it. I'm qualified to teach that section and do the research. But even working, but in my staff job, because I couldn't do the faculty part, was working with STEM faculty to improve teaching and learning, to improve outcomes in the high DFW courses, which mostly are the dumb STEM. No matter if you're a major or not, you failing students and you costing the university a lot of money. But they never took me, like, it was a very tug of war. It was like a cultural thing. The young faculty were interested in working with me as a coach to help them develop different teaching strategies. But then you have the older ones that say, it's normal to only have 30% of your students pass the class. It's fine. Improve it to 35. That is not normal. This is not normal.
That is not normal.
So I hope this shifts, especially for the R1 institutions, a real focus to teaching and learning and making sure. I've worked on a couple projects of like, how do we make this mandatory? Because a lot of senior faculty will tell their graduate students, don't worry about that. Sometimes you may take a foundational course in teaching and learning and call it a day, but it really doesn't help you to create curriculum and lessons and activities and set up your class to help students learn the material at a deeper level, retain it, because they're going to be your doctors one day, right? And so it was always an argument, and it was always me having to convince someone that just because you have a hard science PhD doesn't mean that you are a great instructor. Just because you do research doesn't mean you're a great instructor. And so I hope this shifts as a consultant. Now, I hope it shifts that way. Wind blows. So if
Right.
I'll come in and do faculty training on how to improve teaching and learning inside the classroom, and also the support needed outside to make sure student success their student success rates are increased. So I was
But
very happy for this.
even in the humanities, I mean, research is a very solitary act.
Mm-hmm.
But if you can't explain it, what's the point? And so we have focused so much in higher ed on research and papers and publication and all of that. Who's teaching them,
Yeah.
right? How do you explain it? That's why we defend our dissertations. That's why we have these conversations. That's why we do all of those things. And so I think that once we create balance and put it in this triptych model of, yes, teaching, research, and service, but we must be mindful that teaching in the institution must be paramount. Knowing how to teach, helping faculty learn how to teach in all of their subjects, because they don't actually teach us how to teach in graduate school.
No. And most people outside of higher ed don't think that. And that's actually why I was supposed to go to a R1 institution and pursue a biology degree, but I had a 2.9 and they don't enroll people without money. So that was that. But that was just God saving my life. But
Right.
when I was trying to figure out what I was going to do, and I went to talk to my mentor, a black physics professor,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, "Well, what do you like? You teach so different. Like, what did you do? How did you do this?" And he was like, "Yeah, I went to a HBCU. Shout out to Southern University, Baton Rouge, my alma mater. They have a very unique program. It's STEM education. It's taught at that time. It was a joint program between the graduate school education department and the science departments. And I was like, I didn't know it existed. But the thing was, I had to have 2 years of physics. My real physics teacher was very inappropriate, as in, feel like he was on shrooms most of the time. And he was still reliving out his 70s, like the 70s, like power.
So you got a hippie.
Yeah. Yeah. He was like, how many of you pansies did your homework? Like, that's how he opened class. Oh. I didn't understand nothing he was doing. I was like, I don't know. Like, I know I'm smart, but like, what is going on? And so, literally, if any students listen to this is not my advice to you. I just had to do what I need to do. I could read the book and get little things, but I had like questions. I would literally go sit in my mentor's office for 15, well, not even 15, probably 10. And I said, I don't get this. He explained it in 5. I would go do my homework and be done. That hour lecture compared to 5, like the teaching strategies were very different. I still ain't never learned nothing from the man that was actually my professor of record. And so that amazed me so much. And I now, having gone through the same program that he did, I understand why. And it's a black and white difference. Teaching wise, right? But I thought that was the magical piece. And that is, I think I'm still on the hunt to do more of that work. And I think this opportunity shifting because, some colleges don't do nothing unless they're told, I think, or have a real reason that affects them, not the kids, not the students, I'm sorry, to do things. So I'm really excited to see what this brings. More STEM departments, because they do probably have the higher DFW, lower retention rates. Hope they do start to seek training and strategies to improve student success. Well, before we leave, shout out to Howard. They're the first HBCU R1 to, well, in this year, but I know they had in like 1987, and Carnegie changed, they lost it. But then next up, North Carolina and Morgan State, or they were very close to getting it recently this year. North Carolina they were 2 grad degrees short of the qualification to get the designation. And I think Morgan State, I forgot what they needed to work on, but those 2 universities are going to be up next to receive their designations.
I do want to say this. I do think that that this still privileges research over teaching.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Carnegie, I would challenge them to have a system that says that privilege. What's a T1? What's a top tier teaching
Yeah.
institution? There needs to be I always said as a provost that one of the things that I've always wanted to do, and we weren't at the other place long enough for me to actually get it done, is that particularly for junior faculty and senior faculty, that there should be always 2 tracks at a teaching institution, right? So those to encourage younger faculty to come to some of these teaching institutions, that they are also on a sort of modified contract, right? That they get a 2-2, like they were at particularly an R1. And then you have some who decide, okay, listen, I can do a little bit, but I really want to focus on teaching. And so that they have a different contract that says you teach a 4-4 or a 3-3 or whatever it is, whatever that the system is. But I think that it still privileges in higher ed research and not the connection between professor and student, and that we need to start thinking about tiers. What is a teaching 1 institution look like? What does a T2? What is a T3? right?
So
And
I
so
challenge you, if you were put on that committee, what would it look like? What would be the eligibility and requirements to be a teacher?
T1, of course, would be high rates in terms of retention and graduation, but also national external, external accreditations in those academic subjects, as well as pass rates for national board exams and all of those things. And so I think because that does give you some kind of foundation externally to say, okay, all right, we're teaching our students. They are going, what is our graduation rate? What is our acceptance rate for graduate and professional school? What are our job placements rate? But the teaching part in terms of those kinds of values, not just necessarily how many faculty are doing research and how many doctoral degrees were. And I think for me, that would be foundational.
Add some type of evaluation to see what are the majority, what, like, at what level of learning do you operate and evaluate in most of your classes, like, if and even teaching, like, student teacher ratio. And
Yeah.
of course that would go down for R1. They wouldn't be able to get that.
Right.
But, like, what's the faculty student ratio? How many of your evaluation or assessments or tests are at the highest level of learning? Are you testing for critical thinking, creation? Are you having them do major projects, internships, all of those things? Like, what does that mean? I'm pretty sure you can.
We should do it as a plan and present it. But I think you're right. I think all of the innovation in teaching media, how much are you actually putting in instruction and in faculty development? How much are you putting in student success? What are the outcomes, but also how much money are you investing? And what is happening in that classroom?
Yeah.
And so I think that deserves some kind of exploration, and I don't think people have thought about it.
I'll even throw in was a part of the National Learning Center Association, but I even throw in, what your learning centers look like? Should centers of teaching and faculty excellence look like? Do you just have one person there? And just,
Or no person, or no
enough
person.
persons? Yeah.
Did it start under a Title III grant, and then the money ran out, and then
Is it the only thing you do is helping people set up their course shelves?
oh god, okay,
Oh yeah, we need to explore. I would love to maybe, do a little writing, a little blog, a little opinion piece. Hold us to that if you're listening to us. Axis if we've written it in 30
yes.
days. And so our last story of the day is kind of near and dear to, it's only two of us, one of us. It is dear to me. I think this is very unfortunate. We've lived it, like, it's just crazy how higher ed leadership in general is going, but this is not an uncommon thing. So Tougaloo College, established in 1869, Jackson, Mississippi, lone beacon of academic excellence and social justice, played pivotal roles in the civil rights movement. The institution has produced generation of influential scholars and activists and leaders, but today they face internal strife that's been going on for almost a decade. The faculty has issued a formal vote of no confidence in the president's provost. My God, president, provost, and registrar. Haven't heard that before. Citing concerns of administrative transparency and alignment with the institution's mission. This follows a 2023 alumni petition, which is going over 1,400 signatures, highlighting issues like declining enrollment and staff turnover. This is coming from an article from Dr. Kirsten Scott, who's a Tougaloo alum and current professor at University of Pittsburgh. She emphasizes that such actions stem from a deep place of care and responsibility. She notes that HBCUs, faculty governance is deeply relational, reflecting a collective commitment to the institution's legacy and future. This is a crossroads where a lot of institutions face, but especially HBCUs. I actually took a topic off of here. It was going to be LSU talking about their turnover at the top. Their provost just left. So again, this is an unfortunate trend in higher education, but it's a crossroads nonetheless, and the community's engagement dedication will be crucial in steering the college towards renewed stability and continued excellence. My question to you, Dr. Jackson, what does this situation at Tougaloo reveal about the broader challenges HBCUs or other small institutions face, and how can institutions balance honoring their legacy while adapting to contemporary demands. Full back
Yeah. Yeah.
to the top of this podcast.
Well, yes. So this is, we talked in our prepping and talked about, do I want to go on record with this one? As a Tougaloo College alumna, 1997 graduate, shout out to my class. It's been, it's painful as an alumna to know that there's such unrest in terms of faculty morale and staff morale. There was a lot of turnover. Part of that is and I'm speaking just as an alum, and I have been an administrator at that institution, is that private Black institutions that have done great work, that are still struggling, enrollment is down, they don't have the facilities to do the flash and the flash of other institutions, but you have faculty there who have been there for years, decades, who have given their lives to the work. And I always tell people that, particularly at Tougaloo, because I know it very well, that no matter what happens in the administration building, I know that faculty are in there teaching because I know them. I worked alongside them. But what institutions must do is really learn how to critique themselves and to say, what is the problem? What are the problems of enrollment? What are the problems? And they gotta really have some hard questions. My approach had always been, if my faculty, whether I was a department chair or director, if my faculty felt valued, and my students would be better for it. And when the faculty say, enough is enough, we need a change, that is a plea for help. That is not, it's not a sense that they're trying to be mean. It's not personal. This is a plea for help because no one wants to lose an institution on their watch. And faculty are there with those students every day, and they're with them more than they're with anyone else, right? And so administrators that go home at 5 o'clock, they don't get the calls and the texts and the long conversations during office hours. They're not dealing with some of those clear issues. And they're telling you, and these students who are leaving or who are at all of these institutions, who are saying, I need help, I'm not feeling valued, I'm having some external, we're not dealing with the whole student. Part of what we do in holistic high is to let them understand that this is a whole student kind of deal, but this is also a whole campus kind of deal.
Yeah.
And so when faculty don't feel valued, or that they don't feel that you are valuing that they are also having lives and they also have their own thing going on, it becomes problematic, especially when you have people. I have colleagues at Tougaloo College who have been there for 20 years, 30 years, 50 years. And they do it, and they could have gone other places. They do it because they love that institution. I'm sure the same ones at Spelman, the same ones at Howard, the same ones at Morgan State, the same ones, at Texas Southern. They've been there for years. They're there and they're fighting. And so when a faculty decides that they have to do a public vote of no confidence, that is not done without reverence.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not done without a conscious decision that this is the last resort. And a lot of times where that comes is that they've tried to have conversations and they've tried to make it work, and their backs are against the wall. So what Dr. Scott, who's a former student of mine, has done is beautifully in love say, we've got to handle this, not just for the legacy of the institution, but for its actual future. How do you go forward when people aren't communicating? Now, I have never heard of a registrar being given a vote of no confidence. So that's concerning.
I was like, my God, the registrar.
The registrar, right? And so that's concerning, particularly.
It is with integrity.
Right, and so your registrar, when I was there, my shout out to my registrar, Carolyn Evans, who I worked with for many years, who was a registrar when I was also a student, who had been trained by the registrar before her, and her office was always helpful. But they are the keeper of the records, and so when there's an issue in that place, because we are the records, right? Our students are our records. Their transcripts are records. They are the products that we send out in the world, but they're also people. And so when there's something askew with the faculty and the registrar, that means that we're talking about curriculum, we're talking about courses, we're talking about records, and what lasts is what we have on paper. So that is very concerning to me. I don't know the registrar, But I do know that inclusion speaks volumes in this. And so between and what Dr. Scott has done beautifully is that when the alumni have a petition that was very successful, and now 2 years later we have this other issue, we've got to do we have to have some hard conversations about going forward. And I think every institution has to understand, every leadership team, every administrative team at every level needs to be able to sit down. And this is about shared governance, right? And shared governance does not mean that I share it with you what decisions I've made, right? It means that we need to have a conversation. Now, as a provost or as a president, I have to make the final decision. But I cannot make I cannot make a decision that will be respected, whether or not they disagree with it, unless I've pulled people to the table to have this conversation. I need to share what my feelings are about the subject. You need to be able to share what your feelings are so that we can come to some middle ground in the best interest of the institution.
And share, once you make the decision,
and
share how you came to that decision, use evidence of the voices and the information, and then people can respect you for making hard decisions when it comes to that.
So we had this issue at K-State, right? There was always this conversation about what they're spending on the budget and blah, 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 and they're doing all of these things. So what did I do? We had budget hearings. For the first time, the faculty senate could come in and we talked about budget. So when they got a chance to see the budget and what the priorities are that we tied to the strategic plan, that every budget request had to be tied to the strategic plan or external accreditation, right? First, accreditations always came first. That once they were able to see it, they could appreciate it. We never really had that conversation again. That this is the way we're looking at this budget. It's only so much money. But because their minds had run, their imaginations or their heart, long-held feelings about this and that. How many times did I have to stand in the gap and say, hey, I wasn't even here. 20 years ago, I wasn't here. I don't know who you're mad at, but listen, I apologize, but let's go forward. But when you have budget hearings and you can show what the budget is, and this is how much money it takes, and this is what the requests are, that people say, okay, well, this is how, okay. And so those are kind
of... We really don't have that much money.
We don't have as much money as we thought we did. And they're spending it the way we're down to the wire. And so even when people are requesting a rate that you put everybody on a tier, this year we're doing music and nursing because they're up, and public administration because they're up for external accreditation. Next year we're going to do this. And if you can create that kind of transparency and bring people to an understanding, it shows that you respect them as human beings, you value them in their role, and that they can all go forward together. They'll fight for you.
Yeah.
Just a simple fact of understanding that people, people got sick parents, they got sick children, they got sick dogs and cats, and that means something to them. They are living outside of the gates of wherever you are. So I think that Tougaloo at this point, at this time, as we celebrate commencement, I'll be at our commencement ceremony this Sunday. As we celebrate these commencements, as we celebrate, new positions and people are doing blah, 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 that we also have to have some hard conversations and understand that these kinds of no confidence votes should not be personal. And I don't think in this case that they are.
Yeah.
I think this is a faculty
last resort.
This is a last resort. And particularly for people, you are not paying them enough, right, to just do this willy-nilly. Right? That means that it is what it is. But I think that all institutions have to see this and treat this with the reverence and a sense of urgency that it requires, because no faculty does this just because. They're not issuing out, no confidence votes like Tic Tacs.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I know that my alma mater, and it is difficult to talk about, but know this, particularly as people are making their final decisions, I know what's going on in those classrooms because I know those people. I know the nights that they've stayed, they've stood up, and they come to events and because they're small enough that it is a family-like atmosphere. They do that, and this is no different from making sure that your child doesn't touch their hot stove.
Yeah.
because sometimes your faculty and your staff see the writing on the wall before you do, because they are with those students every day.
Yeah.
So it's difficult, but
it could be a turning point. It will be a turning point. I'll speak positive. It will be a turning point, but what you'll consistently hear on this podcast, it starts with the board.
It starts with the board.
Starts with the board.
It starts with doing a search. It starts with doing a real one. It starts with allowing people the voice that they need to have. Yeah. You can't keep asking people for money. And this is for all institutions.
Yeah.
Particularly, HBCUs, you cannot keep asking people for money and they feel like, their voices are not being heard.
To mine. So that is, I think, a great place to end. Any parting thoughts? I know it's the end of a semester. I know people are so tired. I have a lot of faculty in my circle. I actually just text one. She's a coaching client of mine. I text one this morning, make sure she's still alive. Not buried under test papers.
Right. I will say this. I'm going to get these grades in today, and then I'm going to rest, and then get back to work. So on my other projects, maybe I'll finish that novel.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll finish it. And for those of you who need a little beachside reading, a little romance suspense, please check me out. C.L. Jackson, Deserving Grace is book 1, and Finding His Treasure, if you like a little romance on your beachside reading.
It's steamy, y'all.
Yes, a little steamy. So hopefully I'll finish the book, and then we have the Jackson Film Festival at the end of July. So got a lot going on.
Yeah, you have.
After I get some rest, a little bit, maybe a day or so. Next week I'm going to New York with one of my besties, and we're going to see Othello. So I'll be able to report back.
I thought I was going to join y'all and sleep on the floor. They say the tickets are $1,000 now.
We did not pay that, no.
Yeah. So I didn't get in when I was supposed to.
Yeah. We'll be in the room, but we will not be at a $900 ticket, no. But Denzel said it best. He was like, he's been very blessed to do what he does.
I love that for him.
I
love it for him.
I do too. I really do. And I've seen him before on stage, and it's amazing.
Yeah.
But just to see him live is amazing.
Yeah. Well, it's not as great as Denzel Washington's Othello. I'm going to the movies to see a new Marvel movie. After we wrap at 2:45 before it comes out in their spoilers on the Nerd YouTube channels. So that is my light, shining light. Actually, it's not. I'm gonna take that back. I am speaking at a trio senior dinner, and I think that I love trio. Was in trio, worked for trio, led trio. So it'll be a fun day. Speaking from my book and just giving a little advice to the seniors going off to college. Yeah.
The newness of life.
Yeah. Plus they live hard. I remember that time. Such a great time. I did have a very great glow up summer after graduation. So I hope that for them too. Yes. Well, we will see y'all later, sooner, maybe. We're going to get it together. We promise. We're going to get it together. We grow. We're going to be, hey, our consistency looks like this right now. That is a lesson from the other half of me, the success coach of me, the consistency. Just keep going until just get better. So
next time we'll talk about centers.
Yes. Oh, yes, yes.
So by the time we come back, maybe in a week or so, we're gonna make that we won't be giving y'all spoilers, but we got to talk about it.
Yeah. Hopefully I would have seen it twice by then.
Right. If you haven't seen it, go see it, and then make time to go see it again.
Yeah.
This is amazing.
Well, we are out, and we will see y'all on the other side. Be sure to DM us or communicate with us, whether it's on YouTube, or leave us some comments under wherever you going to listen to this. Let us know you're listening, what you want to hear. So, all right. Bye.
Thanks for listening. This episode was sponsored by Holistic Higher Ed Solutions, committed to enhancing student success. From coaching to planning, our practitioners empower institutions. Ready to transform? Visit holisticheredsolutions.com and let's revolutionize higher ed together. Be sure to subscribe, review, and join us next time.